Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is episode number 288 of this icy yet spicy casual podcast for all you filthy casual fans out there like you and me. And in this episode, we're here to talk about, once again, the NFL in our weekly review on the 2025 NFL season. This is the third week that we are doing this, and so much has happened. Once again, more craziness around the league, and we're just 3 weeks in, but we'll hold off on that. We'll hold off our thoughts on that, talking about the week that was in week number 3 and a brief touch on the week that will be towards the end of the episode. So yeah, before we get started on this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, both on YouTube and on the podcast platforms, whether it's on Apple and Spotify. And follow the show on social media at Very Cold Lasagna on X and Instagram. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, turn on the notification bell so it reaches out to the YouTube algorithm, and leave a comment down below with your takes on the topic at hand, and that being the NFL week in review, week number 3, and everything I'm talking about, with all the games, all the highlights, all the takes that I have on each and every team that we're going to be talking about in this week in review roundup. So that being said, let's get started with our week in review, number 3 for the 2025 NFL season. And it all started off in Buffalo on Thursday Night Football, only for that $15.99 a month pal on Prime Video, as the Buffalo Bills took on the Miami Dolphins. And oh boy, the Miami Dolphins had plenty of opportunities to win this game, but unfortunately, self-inflicted errors once again got in their way, and it gave way for Josh Allen and the Bills to put this game away 31-21. And I gotta say about this Miami Dolphins team, they really put forth their best effort on both sides of the ball. They put Josh Allen in check defensively, and Tua was able to move the offense for the most part to keep this game pretty even for most of this game. Unfortunately, though, it still didn't matter, just as it had in their last 2 games, because they had a lot of mental errors that cost them this game. Those errors in this game specifically being a roughing the kicker penalty by edge rusher Zane Zeiler, which resulted in a first down in favor of the Bills, and the eventual game-winning touchdown for Buffalo, and Tua throwing yet another boneheaded interception to corner Terrell Bernard. That essentially sealed the game in favor of Buffalo. So if the Dolphins ever want to win a game this season, they might have a chance next week against the Jets. Well, they're not going to win one if they keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. Yeah, even if it's a team against like the Jets. Meanwhile, for the Buffalo Bills, they're doing pretty good so far. Josh Allen continues to do Josh Allen things, but the defense starts to show some cracks in this game. They got beat badly by a desperate Dolphins offense that couldn't pressure or cover in this game. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver and linebacker Matt Milano, they were sorely missed in this one because they couldn't get any pressure on the defense without them. Couldn't get any pressure on Tua, so that was a bad beat for that Buffalo defense. But still, they got the key turnover and the key stops that they needed, nonetheless. So it's something to think about for Sean McDermott. And he hopes to get some good news on those two when they face a Saints team led by Spencer Rattler, who just got their asses whooped 3 days later in Seattle. So the Saints are coming to town to Buffalo, and who knows? I mean, never say never when it comes to the NFL, but the Bills, you might be able to handle the Saints. Going to the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion, as the Carolina Panthers took on the Atlanta Falcons, and oh boy, the Panthers suddenly decided to show up in this one. Not like they showed up last week, but they did a better job this week in their home opener, picking on Michael Penix Jr., literally, with a pick 6, and even blanking them out, shutting them out 30-0. So that was a real surprise there. And I got to ask about the Atlanta Falcons. What happened? Like, what the hell happened there? They did well. They did so well last week, following up a rebound defensive effort from last week's game against Minnesota, and yet they did terribly in this game against Carolina. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, Michael Penix Jr. got bullied so bad to the point that he got benched in the fourth quarter for Kirk Cousins. Yeah, the however many $1 million for Kirk Cousins, that backup. And then the kicker that went 5 for 5 last week, replacing Young Hui Koo, and ended up releasing John Parker Romo. He may end up being a one-game wonder. So, yeah, the Falcons had many missed chances and overall poor execution in this game. So now they have to go back to the drawing board, and they may have to be desperate themselves against a Marcus Mariota-led Washington Commanders next week. Meanwhile, for the Panthers, obviously it's just one game. It's just one win. So don't let this game against Atlanta fool you. They're still a flawed team. They're still a flawed defense. They still have a flawed quarterback. But this is a needed win for them, and especially for Bryce Young, who is obviously still trying to keep his job and still trying to look good. And he did look good against a supposedly good Falcons defense. So going on to the next game, we had the Green Bay Packers taking on the Cleveland Browns in a game that most people thought the Packers would win decisively, but instead, no. This game got down to the wire, and it came down to the final moment thanks to a blocked field goal by Shelby Harris. And that opened the door for the Browns to have their own kicker, Andrew Smites, get some redemption for the last two missed kicks that he had. And he kicked the game winner and complete a 10-0 comeback and an upset of the Green Bay Packers 13-10. And I gotta say about the Packers, I said this in the last weekly roundup. Their offense is really inconsistent, and it continues to be inconsistent here. So everyone was rattled by a Cleveland defense that elected to show up Sunday after getting their asses handed in Baltimore last week. So yeah, the Cleveland defense decided to show up and pretty much make Jordan Love's life a living hell. Sure, Jordan Love had some nice throws, including a nice touchdown, but he also threw a really bad interception that pretty much changed the momentum of that game. And he also took a really terrible sack that was basically his fault at the end of the third quarter. So that was pretty much no excuse for that. I mean, sure, the offensive line got starters back for this game. So you pretty much had the starting five out there, but then they quickly lost two of its starters to injury, which didn't really help matters. So the Packers impressed in the first two games, but this setback needs to be a wake up call for them in order for them to do better and to get healthy offensively. Meanwhile, for the Browns, it's still a lost season for them. But they'll at least look at this win as a positive, and the fact that defense might be a little bit better than expected and could be a big positive by the time the season comes to a close. They spent a lot of Sunday taking advantage of that makeshift Packers offensive line, harassing Jordan Love, getting a key interception from Grant Delpit with just 3 minutes to go. So yeah, there's still a lot of problems with this team. Hey, like I said, you may have a potential positive when the season is over. Meanwhile, in the land of all elite, you had an AFC South matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. And it was like a game that neither team seemed to want to win. As it came down to the wire, but Travis Etienne's goal line run and a game-sealing interception by Antonio Johnson, it powered the Jags to a win. Yeah, that pretty much a game that nobody wanted to win, 17-10. Yeah, it was that kind of game. And in that game, the Texans really need to have some concerns about CJ Stroud. And a lot of people like me are concerned about CJ Stroud. Like, is he okay? And sure, like the offensive line, it still has its struggles. Like, it's well apparent that they still don't want to fix that offensive line, and they're going to beat up with that offensive line. But we kind of have to start looking at how glaring CJ Stroud's play has been 3 games in. And again, we can pinpoint at the struggles of the offensive line, but you also have to look at the quarterback himself. Conservative passing that go nowhere, trying to force too many throws, and it was pretty apparent in this game. It led to 2 costly interceptions, one of which was towards the end of this game. The rest of the offense has had its fair share of mistakes, but CJ Stroud is not blameless. And that continues going into the next week in another key division game against a rebuilding Titans team. They better start sounding the alarm bells. Meanwhile, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're clearly a lot of growing pains still under Liam Cohen's offensive system, because Trevor Lawrence was still airballing a lot. The run game took a long while to get going, but the defense at least is still picking up steam. So that's positive. That's a positive for the Jaguars, but I feel like the offense is really taking a while to pick up. It's really taking a while to them to learn that system under Liam Cohen. So it'll face an interesting test against a 49ers team that sure it lost Nick Bosa, but they're still a tough out when the Jaguars are on the road. Meanwhile, in the battle of the backups at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Isaiah Rodgers stole the show with a pick 6 and a fumble return, scoop and score touchdown as the Vikings laid out a near 50 bomb on the Cincinnati Bengals, 48-10. Yeah, think about that score. Say to yourselves, and especially to the Cincinnati Bengals, oh boy, talk about oof. And for the Bengals, that you want to throw that Sunday away because it was just error after error after error. And no, it was not banger after banger after banger. No, it was not that. It was not that kind of Sunday for Cincinnati, because boy, the pick 6, the running back Chase Brown fumbling the ball 4 times. 3 of them, no, not 3 of them, all of them in the first half, one including that scoop and score by Isaiah Rodgers. Oof. Just oof. So if the Bengals are going to continue to play like this, then opposing defenses are going to continue to take advantage of that. So, yeah. Zach Taylor is going to need Jake Browning to play like the Jake Browning that nearly got Cincinnati to a playoff spot 2 years ago in 2023. Meanwhile, for Carson Wentz, he didn't do too bad in this game. He was all right in his first actual start since 2022. Not like spot starting, because in the last week of a regular season, like he did in 2023 and 2024. No, this was like his first real start. And is a fill-in for JJ McCarthy, like for at least a month. So yeah, he made little mistakes in this game, and he let Jordan Mason and the defense dictate the game. So Wentz didn't really have to do all that much in this game against a Bengals team and its backup doing pretty terribly. But the real test comes next week when they have to head to Dublin Island to face a stingy Steelers defense. So that's going to be a big test for them. But I'm not sure if I want to wake up at 6 a.m. to watch that game, though, because that's pretty early. Speaking of the Steelers, they took on the New England Patriots in Foxborough. That defense forced 5 turnovers on Drake May and the Patriots offense as Aaron Rodgers put the finishing touches with a touchdown to Calvin Austin III to beat the Patriots 21-14. The Steelers, their defense had been struggling for two straight weeks, but they came alive in this one, especially with their offense struggling on its own end. But the black and gold made 2 big plays at the goal line to prevent the Patriots from scoring. And they also stopped Drake May and the Pats from trying to tie the game at the very end. So yeah, the defense is it's still too early, but they made the big plays when they need to. Now let's see what they come up with against the Vikings backup Carson Wentz and the team as a whole when they go overseas in Dublin. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, this was a very winnable game. They kept it tight in this one thanks to, the Steelers offense giving them so many chances, but they never could really capitalize on it. After last week's much better performance from Drake May, he kind of was like back to square one. Pretty inconsistent. He lost a fumble. He threw a bad interception in the end zone right before the first half ended. And then you had Ramondre Stevenson, the running back, coughing up a goal line fumble, and then he got benched. So those kind of things not only cost team valuable points, but it also cost them valuable wins that may come back to haunt them later on. I mean, sure, not many people are expecting much out of the Patriots. I mean, I'm kind of like one of those teams that the Patriots are a sort of a like low tier wild card that could make a run, but if they do end up making an run like mid season, then this loss may come back to haunt them. Then we have a NFC divisional rematch from last year as the Philadelphia Eagles took on the LA Rams, a battle of the early unbeatens. And yeah, this was a matchup that the Rams were dominating early, but the Eagles scored 20 unanswered points to overcome a 26-7 deficit, which was cherry-topped with Jordan Davis turning the Rams' potential game-winning field goal into a blocked field goal turned touchdown. And this is where the Special-Teams-Palooza began for week number 3, as the Eagles came back to win 33-26. But starting with the Rams, they choked this game. They absolutely choked this game. And it's not the fault of not at least for the most part, the offense, but it's their defense. Not the front seven though, but the secondary. The secondary really folded in the second half. But yeah, that for whatever reason, they let AJ Brown and the rest of the offense feast on them to allow that comeback. Maybe perhaps they're older, they can't keep up, or they just got too laid back. But whatever the case was, they just let the rest of the Eagles come back, and now they may have given other teams ammunition to attack a potential weakness, which is their secondary. Meanwhile, for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jordan Davis was pretty crucial to the comeback. And this is not to discredit the offense, which had a major role, but Jordan Davis was the more crucial role. He blocked a field goal in the fourth quarter, not other than obviously the game-ending blocked field goal turned touchdown. But he made some big plays. He was a major difference maker, other than the 2 blocked field goals, disrupting a disrupting sack, a QB hit. So yeah, he made his presence felt in that game to help seal the deal on Philly's big comeback win in week 3. So yeah, good for Phil, good for them. Then before we move on to the next game, I just want to point out that the officiating was like absolutely dog shit in this game. If you like, whether you watch the game in full or watch the highlights of this game, yeah, you could clearly tell that the officiating was terrible in this one. They missed a lot of stuff in this one, including the absolutely controversial tush push. The referees missed a false start yet again, a blatant false start, which the NFL was trying to get these officials to crack down on more, but they just refused to. A blatant push off by AJ Brown on Darius Williams that allowed one of the touchdowns to get the Eagles back into the game, and a face mask by Reed Blankenship on Davante Adams that prevented a Rams touchdown. Isn't that telling favoritism? Isn't that telling Vegas odds? I mean, can we just have fair officiating, like, or at least like good officiating for once? I don't know. So then we had the Tampa Bay Bucks taking on the New York Jets. This was another one of those cases of Special-Teams-Palooza, because the Jets stormed back from a 23-6 deficit in the fourth quarter, and they even took the lead before the game ended because of a blocked field goal touchdown by Will McDonald IV. They only held it briefly, though, because Baker Mayfield led another game-winning drive, and Chase McLaughlin finished it off with the game-winning field goal, 29-26. The poor Jets. They had the blocked field goal turned into a touchdown. You had the meme of Aaron Glenn prematurely celebrating. Yeah, I'm loving the memes on Twitter right now of Aaron Glenn dancing around of that touchdown. So go check it out. Go check out all the memes of that on Twitter. It's great. It's great stuff. But seriously though, the Jets really need to take what they learned from that almost comeback into that Monday night game versus the Dolphins. Because Tyrod Taylor, who was filling in for Justin Fields, he led 2 methodical drives to get the Jets within 6. The defense slowed down Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. The blocked field goal happened to happen. And all the defense had to do was stop Baker, but they didn't, unfortunately. But nonetheless, Aaron Glenn and his team, again, they should take these learning lessons into that game on Monday night to try and get their first win. But for now, though, Lol Jets and everyone out there, let's just keep finding and enjoying these memes of Aaron Glenn for now, because they're great. They are absolutely great. Never would have thought that this meme would be perfect. Anyway, meanwhile for the Bucs, they had another late comeback win. This is like their third straight one to start the season. But the bigger story though is that it comes out of price. Mike Evans left the game late in the fourth quarter with a hamstring injury. So he had another hamstring injury last year, and now he has another one again. So we don't know how long he's going to be out. If he's out for a significant amount of time, then rookie Emeka Egbuka, who has been having great success in his first 3 games, is going to have an even bigger role. And another receiver is going to have to step up. But maybe that second receiver is going to be Chris Godwin. He could be back this Sunday. If not, it's going to have to be someone else, because they're going to be facing a major early test in the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Again, as I talked about in my season preview, it always happened to be week 4 when they face the Eagles on an early Sunday, by the way. It always happens to be like either week 3 or week 4, they face Philadelphia. Kind of weird. But anyway, down we go to Tennessee as the Indianapolis Colts take on the Tennessee Titans in the second AFC South division matchup of the week, as the Colts rolled on once again with Jonathan Taylor taking over in the second half with a big midfield touchdown run and another one at the goal line to seal a blowout division win for the Colts, taking down the Titans 41-20. And the Colts continue to surprisingly dominate on offense. Daniel Jones continuing to avoid any mistakes and surprisingly look good doing it before Jonathan Taylor finished it off. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of season left to go. And now next week, the real test will come as they head out to Los Angeles, head out west to face a tough Rams defense, especially that front seven. For the Tennessee Titans, it doesn't help that Cam Ward made his own mistakes, like an opening pick 6. You have to look at the rest of the offense. They're not helping him. The offensive line is not protecting him. His receivers continue to drop balls like they're like Butterfinger. And I'm not talking about the candy, but it's like, I can't believe it's not butter. But anyway, they're not helping his development along. And we're only in week 3. Can you imagine like where we would be right now if it, like, let's say week 9 or week 10, and they're still doing this to Cam Ward? I wouldn't blame Cam Ward if you were like really frustrated with this offense. Meanwhile, we had the Washington Commanders take on the Las Vegas Raiders, and oh boy, yeah, the Commanders put this one away relatively quickly because of the rushing attack by committee and special teams, leading the way for an easy win for Washington, 41-24. Not too much to take away for Washington. They were starting Marcus Mariota in place of the injured Jaden Daniels, and Mariota managed the offense pretty well before handing the reins over to the rushing attack by committee. So if he has to do so again next week in Atlanta against the Falcons, against his old team, then I'm pretty sure he'll do fine. Give Jaden Daniels more time to heal up. Meanwhile, for the Las Vegas Raiders, this is an embarrassing team effort. Off the heels of another very embarrassing team effort, which We would have gave slack for the Chargers loss, but then this against the Commanders was very bad. But this embarrassing team effort can be really pointed towards a shitty offensive line that really got exposed in this one. Like there are several flaws on this team, but Sunday exposed anything. This one it exposed that the offensive line is the most glaring one. Geno Smith got sacked 5 times. He was under complete duress against a Commanders pass rush that is honestly not exactly one of the best, but because there are some aging vets, but they could still get to the quarterback, including Von Miller. But they could still get to Geno. They could still pressure his butt. They clogged up Ashton Genty, so that's pretty telling, pretty concerning for that Raiders O-line. So if Pete Carroll has any offensive linemen that could shake up that rotation, he desperately needs to do it because Geno's going to get blasted into Saturn or Uranus or Pluto and whatever planet that doesn't exist into the stratosphere before November even hits. He needs to shake up that offensive line now. So going to the late afternoon slate of games, in SoFi, the Chargers home opener, they took on the Denver Broncos in a key AFC West showdown, and it was a tight one at that. Justin Herbert led the charge, no pun intended, to get his kicker, Cameron Dicker, in getting the game-winning field goal, 23-10. And yeah, the Chargers got a big division win. But for the Broncos starting off first, Bo Nix, he played relatively okay, kept pace with Justin Herbert, but he could have led Denver to the W had he connected with Cortland Sutton on a critical deep ball at the 2-minute mark. But instead, he missed, and that turned out to be the difference maker. Now he, along with the Broncos and the Chiefs, and we'll have to hope that the Chargers charger as the season goes along, if they have any shot at the division. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, they got the 3-0 division lead that they need to start the season. So, yeah, good for them. It's not guaranteed that they finish the year with a division title or a playoff berth or both. For example, last year's Falcons, when they got the 3-0 division lead by midseason, it's still important to note that the Chargers got it regardless. And they're pretty much firing on all cylinders right now. They just need to keep winning and keeping the division at bay. Then we had the Seattle Seahawks hosting the New Orleans Saints in the 12. The Seattle Seahawks poured it on with 2 touchdowns apiece from Kenneth Walker III and Torrey Horn in a game that was pretty much over by the first half, 44-13. So, yeah, not much to say about this game. Starting with the Seahawks, Torrey Horn continues to be the third receiver that Seattle needed. He was rightfully targeted a lot last week, but he made a statement this week with the punt return touchdown and his second career touchdown before the end of the first half, which pretty much ended the game for Seattle in favor of them. Meanwhile, for the Saints, where were they? Where were they? Where's the effort shown in the first 2 games, and why couldn't it translate in this one? There's no resistance, no offense, no nothing. So, where was any of that? I couldn't tell you. Then in Chicago, we had the Bears took on the Dallas Cowboys. Caleb Williams sliced and diced that Cowboys defense in the air all day long, leading the Bears to 4 straight scoring drives and a complete blowout of the boys, 31-14. Let's just say that the Cowboys passing defense looks like dog dookie water. This the same group that got to a shootout with the putrid Giants a week ago, and is now getting his ass whooped by the Bears offense. So, yeah. They also lost Trayvon Diggs in the second half with a knee injury. So, at first, they're still dealing with Deron Bland having a foot injury, and now they lost Trayvon Diggs to a knee injury, and who knows how long he'll be out. So, by the way, they got an angry Packers team that just lost to the skid marks, and they have Micah Parsons now returning to Dallas. And yeah, that's not good news for a Packers secondary that just got its butt whooped by by the Bears. Meanwhile, for the Bears, they finally decided to unleash its creativity with Caleb in the offense. Yeah, it took 2 weeks of hard growing pains, but they finally managed to dish it out. Ben Johnson, specifically, such as like the long bomb flea flicker from Caleb to Romeo Odunze, and an end around from Olamide Zaccheaus. So those like two specific examples. I'm sure there were a lot more, but again, we're still only 1 week in with this creativity, and it was against a weak Cowboys team. But if Ben Johnson could continue to keep his team playing like this, especially against better teams, then who knows? Maybe things can continue to look up for the Bears. Meanwhile, we had my San Francisco 49ers taking on the Arizona Cardinals in a key NFC West showdown. And it was pretty much a stalemate in the Niners home opener. And it went down to the wire with the limping Mac Jones marching the Niners down the field to get Eddie Pinheiro to hit a game-winning De Niro and more Special-Teams-Paloozas, 16-15. And Arizona, they honestly had a lot of chances to win this game, but they didn't. They had multiple 6-minute possessions, yet they only came away with 6 points to show for it because of a stagnant run game, Kyler wilting to the 49ers pass rush, and receivers like Marvin Harrison Jr. dropping open passes, like especially one that Fox just kept cutting to, which shows like how bad, like, and not specifically Marvin Harrison Jr. is, but just how bad like the Cardinals receiving core just keeps dropping passes. But what was even more backbreaking for Arizona's offense was the season-ending ankle injury to James Conner, which is a major blow to that offense, who couldn't really function as well in the rushing game the rest of the way. And now they're going to have to focus more on Trey McBride and Harrison Jr. going forward. And if they could get anything out of their backup running back, then that's at least something. But they're going to have to adjust accordingly and on short order for a Thursday night game against Seattle. Meanwhile, for my 49ers, they overcame late fourth quarter mistakes. Those fourth quarter mistakes being an inexplicable interception by Mac Jones and an end zone holding penalty by Dominic Pooney that led to a safety. But what I liked in this game was that they didn't wilt. They didn't let that stop themselves from losing this game. Normally it would, but yeah, they didn't give up. They stopped Kyler on third down, and then Mac Jones led a very nice 2-minute drill to get Eddie Pinheiro into range. So yeah, some good stuff there. Some really good stuff to pull out a gutsy win, but it did come at a cost though, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So then we get to the Sunday Night Football game for week number 3 as the Kansas City Chiefs took on the New York Giants in a game that, well, somebody had to win because they were 0-2. So yeah, it was a relatively uneventful Sunday night game, but we saw a big moon ball by Patrick Mahomes get thrown to Tyquan Thornhill in the fourth quarter, and it gave way for Kareem Hunt to score at the goal line and put the Giants away for good, as they ended up winning 22-9. For the Chiefs, Tyquan Thornhill, he has been a big help for Patrick Mahomes in their ongoing receiver problems. He's really stepped it up in the last 2 weeks to be Mahomes' go-to receiver in the short and deep passing game, especially considering that Travis Kelce has been, not really doing that well and trying to help Mahomes. So even when Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy return, Thornhill should remain a big focus in what should be a 3-headed attack for the Chiefs receiving game. Meanwhile, for the Giants, at least, even though they lost this game, at least it finally woke up Brian Dable or whoever made the call for this specific thing to slot in Jackson Dart. Yeah, because the Cowboys game was clearly an asterisk because under the bright lights of Sunday night, with all of America watching, Russell Wilson cowered. He cowered in fear to being the Russell Wilson we've seen in Denver, in Pittsburgh, and 2 weeks ago in Washington. So yeah, he went back to being the Russell Wilson that we've seen in all those times. But fortunately for Giants fans and a select a select number of NFL fans out there, probably like a lot of analysts, a lot of filthy casuals like me, Brian Daboll and ownership or ownership elected not to wait much longer to put the first round rookie Jackson Dart into the starting role next week against the LA Chargers. Now, I personally would have waited another week for Daboll or the ownership to put Jackson Dart when they face the Saints in New Orleans, so they don't like set up Jackson Dart for failure. But having Dart see what he has against a hot Chargers team is going to be an interesting first test for him. So not a bad move for Big Blue. So I can kind of understand it. So then we have the Monday Night Football game to close out week number 3 as the Lions took on the Ravens, and it seemed primed for a shootout at first, but another costly fumble by Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it changed things. It changed things in favor of the Lions to put the game away for good with the David Montgomery touchdown that Jared Goff seemed really upset about because like in those type of situations in the fourth quarter with like less than 2 minutes to go, yeah, you don't want that. But anyway, the Lions went on to beat the Ravens anyway, 38-30. Now, sure, when the Lions won this game, the talk will be about Jared Goff and that Lions offense, but we got to give credit to their defense in neutering Lamar Jackson behind the lines, the line of scrimmage, behind the first down lines, and they sacked him 6 times on Monday. They forced the critical fumble on Derrick Henry that turned the game around and assured that the Ravens wouldn't force much of a comeback. So it's still a little too early to say that but it seems like Detroit has settled back in. They settled into what their new coordinators are giving them, and they're running with it. So it seems like the Lions are fully settled back in for now. For the Baltimore Ravens, the reason why they're 1-2 is because, well, Derrick Henry has cost them these games. It's twice now that Derrick Henry has fumbled the ball at key moments, and it comes down to ball security, which I haven't seen from him in those situations in at least quite some time. Like, he has to be better with the football. Like, double clutch the football. Like, why is he running it? Why is he running it like this? Like, with one hand? No, you double clutch the football, man. Like, it left Aiden Hutchinson to freely punch the football out of your hands, and then that gave way for Detroit to pretty much run away with this game. So yeah, that was the week that was in the NFL. That was week number 3. Now let's get into our winners and losers from this past week. Starting with the winners, the LA Chargers gained a close victory, just barely squeaking by the Denver Broncos in a tight win and getting a 3-0 division lead in the AFC West pretty early. Now you just gotta, if they want to win this division, you just gotta take care of your business the rest of the way. Again, still pretty early. The Detroit Lions defensive line keeping Lamar Jackson in check, getting 6 sacks on him, and pretty much not letting him go anywhere with those 6 sacks. And then my San Francisco 49ers, they pulled off a gutsy win. They didn't let those 2 fourth-quarter mistakes get to them. And yeah, Mac Jones led a very nice 2-minute drill that led to the Eddie Pinheiro game-winning field goal. Now with the losers, again with Derrick Henry, you cannot have that fumble again in those kinds of situations where you need to get back in the game, and you ended up having it. New York Jets head coach Aaron Glenn, you have that blocked field goal touchdown, and then you decide to pull out all the memes and prematurely celebrate, and then only to have Baker Mayfield and the Bucs break your hearts. But hey, we got a meme. We officially get a meme out of it, so that's at least a win for the fans. A meme. And then the Atlanta Falcons. A week after you pull out your best defensive effort, you get your worst, your absolute worst, and you get blanked by the Panthers. So going into week 4, as we close out this episode of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, let's talk about some of the headlines going into this coming week. For the people that want to wake up at 6 a.m. Here in California, or if you're wherever you're watching this, whether in the United States, but here in Cali, it's at 6 a.m. In, I'd say Hawaii, for example, it's much earlier. So I do feel sorry for you over there in Hawaii. But here in California, it's 6 a.m. And that's because the international series games begin with the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for the first time ever, it's in Dublin, Ireland. So, yeah, the NFL is trying to expand its audience to a much more global expansion. Yeah, they're trying to expand this thing much more globally. And it's been more apparent because they're trying to do flag football in Saudi Arabia. Okay. All right. That's very interesting. That sounds like a more TKO-ish move. It gives you that TKO WWE WrestleMania 43 vibes move, but that's not besides the point. What we're here to talk about is, for the first time ever, the NFL is going to be played in Dublin, Ireland this coming week. And there's going to be even more countries for the first time ever at some point. And I think there's one next week that the Vikings are going to play against the Browns for the first time ever. I just don't remember which one. Then we obviously get another rendition of Patrick Mahomes going against Lamar Jackson again. They're both 1-2. And one of these teams is going to end up being 1-3. And that's not a good thing for either one of these quarterbacks and their teams. Even if it's like a near quarterway point of the season. So, one of these teams is going to have to, pick up some slack. And then for my San Francisco 49ers, going back to, my takeaway from that game and why it came at a cost. Well, they lost Nick Bosa to a torn ACL. It didn't seem like it was serious because he was doing high knees, walking around, but apparently when he gave that thumbs down, apparently it was unfortunately a lot worse. So Nick Bosa is out for the season. That is his second ACL tear in 5 years in his whole NFL career, but it's the same ACL he tore back in high school. And now the 49ers will have to try to replace his production, which is going to be very hard to do for a guy like Nick Bosa. So, life goes on. You got to try to replace him, whether it's Bryce Huff, Mykel Williams, where's within that defensive line depth, that remains to be seen. We'll have to use the next 2 games as a litmus test against the Jaguars, against the Rams, and even against the Bucs. It's too early to say. But if it's not promising, then John Lynch will have to make a trade. Then we get another key early NFC matchup this week as the Eagles take on the Bucs again. It always has to be week 4 when these two teams face off in Tampa Bay, mind you. But anyway, that's the cards that are dealt. And it's going to be an interesting test for both teams, especially for the Bucs, given that they're always coming from behind in 3 straight games. So big test for Tampa Bay, but they always seem to find a way to have the Eagles number. Let's see if the Eagles can snap that. And then obviously the biggest storyline going into week number 4 is that Sunday night game when Micah Parsons returns to Dallas as a Packer this time to take on the Cowboys. And this comes nearly a month after he got traded just before the NFL season started. So, that's the biggest storyline going into week 4. And all eyes and ears will be on the bright lights on Micah Parsons in his return to Dallas on Sunday night. Will he wreak havoc to Dak Prescott, or will he falter? This is probably one of the most intriguing matchups of the week I'm looking forward to, aside from obviously my 49ers. So let me know how you felt about week number 3 in the comments below about your team or anything that stood out to you, and what you're feeling going into week number 4. Let's have a conversation about it, whether it's on YouTube in the comments or slide to the DMs on my socials at Very Cold Lasagna on X and Instagram. So with that being said, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. This is episode number 288. In a wrap, that is it. And can't wait to talk to you more football in the next edition of our NFL Weekly Roundup, Week in Review, after week number 4 is done. So, until then, continue to watch some good old football this coming week. Hopefully, it will continue to be as crazy as this past week was with these special teams and comebacks galore. And yeah, let's see what this week has to hold. But until then, until that next weekly roundup in the NFL, peace out.